Tonight on Life on the Rock, we have Father Mike Schmitz, a video on fatherhood from Ken Ytsync-en, and much more. Welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guest is Father Mike Schmitz. I caught up with him at the Focus Conference in Indianapolis this past January, and he shared with us some notes of his that he was giving a talk on manhood, masculinity. I thought we had a great conversation.
Yeah. Well, he outlined the 4 R's of responsibility, resilience, resolve, and religion. So I think those are, and he goes into all that. So
it's a great interview. He gave us a lot to think about. We're also going to show you now a video from Ken Ytsync-en on fatherhood.
Check. Hi guys, Ken Ytsync-en here. Today let's talk about passing the faith on to our children. Now at the time that I'm recording this video, Janelle and I have 4 children. We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old. So life is busy. And I gotta say, I love our children. And I assume Janelle loves our children too. And when you love someone, what do you want for them? You want the best. That's the nature of love. Love seeks the highest good for the one they love. And so if I'm seeking the best for my children, what is the best life that they could live? It is living the plan that God has for them. Living the best life they have is living the Catholic faith. And so for me, then that means I got to pass on the faith to my children. And how am I going to do that? Well, if I look at who has had the most positive impact on my faith, the greatest influence in my faith, without a doubt, it is and has been my father. And this is why.
To give you an idea of how we grew up, every night before we'd go to bed, Mom and Dad would gather us into the living room, and they'd hand out the rosary beads, and we'd sit down and we'd say the rosary. And I didn't like to say the rosary. That sucker's like 20 minutes long. You know, I was really excited when we discovered the Divine Chaplet of Mercy, because it's less than half that time. But anyways, we would sit in these nice comfy chairs and we'd get the rosary beads. We'd sit down and begin saying our Hail Marys. My dad did something different. This is what my dad did. He got on his knees. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, this is how my dad prayed. And when you have a father that demonstrates the faith with his life and with his words, it burns into your soul. I was branded by his example at a young age. You know, the people in my life who are my heroes, they're not people who walked down, they got the star in Hollywood Boulevard or got their name in headlines in the newspapers. My hero is my dad. And normally at this point in the presentation, I say, if he was here, I'd like to honor him. Turns out today he's here. I want to thank Dad. He's right over there. Give a wave. Thanks.
My father had a great impact on my faith. Why? Because he lived it out. He lived it and he prayed with us as kids. Now, there was an interesting study that was done by the Swiss government regarding passing the faith on to children. And they found that when a man and woman in a home are both devout, they have a 33% chance of passing the faith on to their children. But they found that when the father is not devout, but the mother is very devout, well, it drops right down to 2%. I mean, we're calling that slim to none because there was no fatherly example. But what if we switched that around? What if the father was devout and the mother was not? Well, it jumps right up to 44%. See, this tells me that a father has a great impact on the spiritual life of their children. And so, gentlemen, if you're watching this video and you want to leave a lasting legacy with your life, live your faith, pray with your children, and you'll store up eternal treasures in heaven. Fatherhood matters.
welcome, Father Michael Schmitz.
Thanks, Father.
You're the Director of Youth Ministry in the Diocese of
Duluth, Minnesota.
Duluth, Minnesota, and you're the chaplain at University of Minnesota, Duluth,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
In the Great North, the
The
Northland.
Great North. And you got the beard during the winter? Is that just
Oh
a
man,
winter
it's
thing?
a hardy beard for hardy winters.
Every winter you grow it?
Yeah.
Or-
So when I was a kid, my dad would always come in. He'd always grow a beard in the winter, and he would come in from running or cross country skiing and have an ice beard. And even as a kid, I was like, someday. And so ever since I've been able to grow a beard, I would grow it until I had a good ice beard, and then I could shave it off. And I had the ice beard last week. It was 16 below, but our focus team said, no, keep it for Steve. I'm like, fine. So maybe one more week, maybe one more month. I don't know.
Well, this kind of fits our first topic I wanted to talk to you about. You're giving a talk here at the Focus Conference on masculinity.
Yeah.
Is a beard essential for that? Or?
No, but there is a guy selling beard balm that says that a beard is the sign of manhood or something like that. It sounds like so great, or fatherhood, wisdom. No, but I talked about what was essential for essentially a Catholic man, but just any good man. And I kind of boiled it down to 4 points. That one of the marks of manhood is the man is someone who takes responsibility. Even the mark of adulthood is someone who takes responsibility first for themselves, and then for the people around them. The mark of adolescence, mark of childhood is like, I just care about myself to make sure I'm okay. But responsibility is make sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I can care for others. And that second mark I said of manhood was a resilience, that I've left a life of fragility, and I've acknowledged the fact that this world is dangerous, that this world's not always fair, and I've acknowledged the harsh realities of life and prepared myself to be able to face those, so to be resilient. The third mark I said was resolve. So a man is someone who makes commitments. So if I go through life, and especially college, I'll say this again on Monday, I think, is that college can be the most selfish time in a person's life, because it's all about, you take care of yourself. These are 4 years for you. But
Seminary too. It's so
seminary too.
focused.
I even used the example. I said, remember, I don't know if you
Yeah.
had this, but we had people in seminary say, don't be a navel gazer.
Yeah.
Like you're always staring at your own belly button going, how am I doing, how am I doing, how am I doing? And that can be such a selfish time.
And part of it is because everybody's looking at you, measuring how
They're
you're doing.
evaluating,
You know?
exactly. And so that question is there anyone in my life to whom I'm obligated? That if they needed me, I would have to be there. And if I don't have that commitment, then am I really being the man I should be? And the fourth mark would be religion. In that sense of sin divides us, and religion means to bind. And so I'm being bound back together, bound back to my own heart, being bound back together in Christ. I'm being bound to my brothers and my sisters, and I'm being bound back to the Father. So those 4 marks.
Right. And there's something about men too. It's almost like they have to acquire it. I think when women, they have the responsibility of childbirth. They seem to intuit their responsibilities and things kind of quickly. Men almost have to be formed, taught, instructed.
Well, there's such an interesting thing, I've heard it said, and I think it's borne out in my experience, that men are often, their primary temptation is towards passivity. And a woman's primary temptation is towards control. And so there's a sense where take control of this, and you're taking responsibility. But here's a man who is like, no, if you're gonna take responsibility, fine, you're gonna do it, great, I don't have to. As opposed to what then the opposing virtues from those temptations would be for a man to embrace responsibility and for a woman to be willing to share responsibility. And as opposed to completely take control or completely abdicate responsibility. I think that seems to make sense in my experience, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard mothers say, I'm just forgetting what the writer, they're like Dr. Meg Meeker, she talks about how the mother really has to let the father in. She's so close to the child.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the child's growing up. In some ways, she introduces the child to this is your father. Right. The guy watching TV, he's Harry, he's your dad, And but the guy certainly has to embrace the responsibility. And we still characterized with fear about that. Fear of making a mistake, being vulnerable.
That makes sense.
How do you get over that stuff?
Well, I think that one of the things, people get paralyzed by fear, right? So one of the things that I personally try to do is see myself as a perpetual beginner. In the sense that if you're an expert, you are not allowed to make mistakes. If you're an expert, you're not allowed to not know. And as an expert, you're not allowed to ask questions because you're supposed to know.
Right.
As a beginner, you're like, okay, I'm free to make mistakes and then learn from it. As a beginner, I'm free to ask for help because I don't know everything. And as a beginner, I'm free to ask questions because I'm not supposed to be the person with all of the answers. And I have a good set of brothers in my diocese who are really, really good about saying, Father Mike, you do some things well, but you don't do everything well.
Right.
And so you need us as well. And that's so good because not only are they highlighting, like, no, there's some things you do well, but they're also there to say, for those things you don't do, we're actually your brothers here. We want to help you in this. And I think for a man to have that kind of support, they can be lifted up in some areas, but then also like held up in other areas, or fortified in other areas. That's what it's like to have a brother, a real brother.
And I tell, not a lot, but when it comes up, I like to tell men, encourage them to be mentors. Because I know in my life,
oh man, yeah.
My father passed away in his late 40s. I was like 20, 21. And I've gotten so much from older men in my life. Some of them not even Catholic. They're all married men. But obviously the priesthood witnesses to me. But there's something that's really needed and special that happens between men in that relationship. Do you teach that or experience that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's so essential, right? Is that I think that's part of our culture. What we've lost is that we don't have a sense of like mentorship. I mean, even when it comes to professional life, there's a loss of like the apprenticeship kind of a thing, where here's the master, here's the apprentice, and like here's how you do the hard thing. When it comes to professional life, we don't do that. And when it comes to, I think, living, we don't necessarily do that. There are some places that really do a great job. There are some really great men's ministries that are thriving. And one of the reasons they're thriving is because they're all about that mentorship. Like, I don't have to be eons ahead of you. Maybe I'm only a couple steps ahead of you. That's what Focus does. I mean, that's the model is discipleship. Like, I'll be your discipler. I don't know everything, but I know a little bit more than you. And I'm gonna hold you accountable. I'm gonna call you forward, and I'm gonna show you the next step. And I think that if we rediscover that, I mean, manhood in our culture could really be transformed. I think mentorship, you nailed it, yeah.
Yeah. Even thinking about the priesthood, I think, just thinking now too, like at seminary, I'm absolutely convinced God will come in over the top and anoint that relationship like a priest faculty member, and you just got something from him.
Yeah.
He witnessed, this guy might be really good with people. This guy's a real academic. And just his view of the church and thing just deeply impressed you. And because I go back and visit the seminary, you meet him and say, well, these guys aren't giants. But God used it though.
Yeah.
And he used the press, to make that mark. So it's around, I guess, if we're open to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be able to, I think one thing we could do more is acknowledge those who are good at mentoring, right? To kind of name that's a gift. Yeah. We have a number of great priests in my diocese. There's one in particular who the bishop almost always puts him with one of the associates, younger priests. I don't think there's one associate that's ever had who he doesn't stay in regular contact with, even now. And one of the reasons is he's such a good mentor. Not just a buddy, he's friendly and they become friends, but before that, he's like, no, I'm gonna help you become an excellent priest. And he just really does that, and just does it so well that he still has relationships with basically all of them, and that doesn't always happen.
Right. Back home, we just had a priest pass away. He's a Dominican. He's 101 years old. Wow. I used to go to him for confession. He's like old school Dominican. He could be tough, And I asked myself, why do I keep going to confession to him? I mean, he's got wisdom and everything, but I thought, the first thing was that he was available. He was, a retired priest. He was always there. And it just kind of taught me, Mark, are you available? Are you approachable? Yeah. And I think maybe in the mentor too, you got these, I always look at sometimes the parish, you got men that are converted, and it's such a resource, and it's kind of a call upon them, are you available?
Yeah. Well, I'm giving the last talk of this whole conference. It's kind of like the send talk. And one of the pieces that I'm afraid I'm going to share is that you might be very excited about all the things God has done in your life in the last 5 days. You can't wait to get back to campus because you're going to share the gospel with everybody you meet. And the hard news is you're not going to do it. And the number one reason you're not going to do it is because you don't have any time. Even if someone, your best friend, even if someone that you really love, approach you and say, hey, I know you're Catholic. What do I do with that? Like, oh, hey, my day's so stacked. I have about 30 minutes for you.
Yeah.
But to not have any time, to coat those margins, to slice them so thin, results in an untransformed culture. So until we're actually willing to kind of transform our environments, so that we do have that time. Like here's that priest who's like, he's able to be a mentor to you or make an impact because he was available. Until we're willing to make ourselves available, that means changing my schedule. That means changing my environment. It means changing the pace of my life in order to actually make a difference.
Yeah. What do you think, men, I mean, we're talking a lot about, and we see a lot of, like the role of women in transforming the culture, and no doubt about it, very powerful witness. What do you think men bring to that? Because they're certainly big formators of culture.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
They got gifts, I think, of work, of leadership, specialization. They can just give themselves to a task totally, you know, and almost to their own detriment and harm, you know,
Yeah.
get so obsessed with something. How do you see that gift that they bring?
Well, I had a religious sister who she contacted me the other, maybe a month ago or so, and she said, she was just asked this question by one of her students. What is the women's role in the church? I thought about it and I responded, and I wasn't trying to be snarky. I said, women's role in the church is the same as it is in the family. She's like, haha, what's the real answer? And I'm like, no, actually, sister, I mean it. A woman's role in the church is the same as it is in the family. A man's role in the church is the same as it is in the family. How do you define that? Which one's the leader? Well, when it comes to what? Exactly.
Yeah.
Which one is the one who's taking responsibility? When it comes to what? Which one is the one who doesn't give up? Well, when it comes to what? And there's that masculine genius and that feminine genius that is not easily defined and not easily boxed. So what I would say is, and I said this like to the men earlier today, that this is, in our culture right now, is a radical statement. Say, what are the key markers or the key difference between a man and a woman? Men are those human beings who have the potential to be fathers. Women are those human beings who have the potential to be mothers. Like that's the distinction. So in the church, men, what's the role of your fatherhood? Maybe you're a young man growing into you're going to grow into a father in the church somehow. A physical father, a biological father, or a spiritual father. Even if you're never ordained, you never have children of your own, who are you fathering? Because that's what you can do. And same thing with women. Who are you mothering? You say, well, define mothering, define fathering. Be a dad, be a mom to someone. And I would say that would be one of those key things. That reframed my own priesthood was when someone reminded me, well, the core identity of the priest is dad. Like, oh my gosh, that changes everything. So anyways.
Yeah. I remember talking to this, I was a father of a number of kids, I think it was like 10 kids or something. They were hitting teenage years, starting to get ready to go to college, and I said, how is it? You got teenagers now. He said, I am loving it. He said, I feel like I'm really coming into play now.
Oh, yeah.
He was taking the kids to visit colleges, and it's like, I've heard it said that, men, like the mom introduces the child to the dad introduces the child to the world.
Yeah.
And so he can guide father, and he's had all these experiences to guide, to teach the young person.
Yeah.
So that's been great. We got just a minute left, I think, and on praying the Mass, one tip on that?
The one thing that I think is, well, here's the thing. I would say this, the heart of religion is worship. Like that's the core thing that religion is about. The heart of worship is sacrifice. And one of the things we forget is that at the Mass, it's a holy sacrifice of the Mass, that we are representing the great once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus Christ, crucified, died, and risen, ascended back to the Father. The problem with a lot of us is even when we are faithful to the Mass, we show up just to watch. We show up to watch the priest pray, we show up to watch the priest offer the sacrifice, and we forget that if you're baptized, you've been consecrated a kingdom priest, which means you're supposed to participate with the ministerial priest in offering up the one great high priest to the Father. And so to show up to Mass realizing, no, I have a job here, and my job is to be united through the ministerial priest to the great high priest to offer up the sacrifice, in addition to also be the sacrifice with Jesus on the altar. And if we were to show up to every Mass like that, there's no Mass that's boring, and there's no Mass that's not powerful, because every Mass does two things: gives the Father glory and saves the world. And if we realize that, everything would change. Work
of salvation is being carried out
and
spread to us. Well, I like talking to you in a
Same,
beard,
same,
you know?
Father.
It gives greater authority to your words.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Well, welcome back. This week we decided to hit you up with a challenge at the beginning of the End of the Vineyard segment, and that is don't be passive. I was really struck by what Father Mike had to say, that men have a tendency to be passive and that we really need to be aware of that, you know, to fight that.
Yeah, we do. I think a great way is, you know, just looking at the list of responsibility, of resilience.
That's the list of marks of masculinity.
Right, the 4 R's of, you know, religion and resolve. You know, you know, there are a lot of challenges that we face today. There's a lot of doubts, temptations, sins that we have to deal with. But, you know, as we go closer to our faith, you know, it's good that we do take ownership of it. You know, that, you know, we have to reinforce a lot of times the discipline of going to Mass, of saying our prayers, of doing all that, you know, but that will build us up, you know, because God's grace is going to work through us, you know, especially in our, you know, as a man, you know, as a brother, you know, we have, you know, duty and obligations even to reach out to an unbelieving world, to evangelize, to go out there. And I think one of the things that he touched on that's so important is mentorship today. So
yeah. And I like the theme about making a commitment, you know, that certainly contradicts passivity in our life. And we can look at the practice of religion, meaning to bind, you know, making that commitment not to be passive about our faith, but to have resolve, you know, to be resilient, to persevere even when we're tired or sleepy, don't feel like going. All that kind of stuff builds character.
you know, it's a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that ties into what we believe, you know.
Yeah.
And but even with the commitment, that's very, because today it seems like in our culture, there's just people are less committed to a lot of things, marriages or their job or a lot of things. And you know, when you do persevere, there's great fruits that come through commitment.
You know, I think with men, you know, I think God endows men with a special energy and an ability to specialize, to work hard, to be focused. And our tendency is to hold back that gift, you know. So we need to be challenged to give that gift, and that it matters. You know, Ken Yazinski's video on fatherhood, he talks about how the father and the family, statistically, they've shown that the father's practice of the faith has a bigger impact on the child's future practice of the faith than the mother's influence. So if the father's going to Mass practicing, that has a huge impact, right? He images God the Father to the child. And so how important is that masculine witness in the culture, that we're given gifts to transform the culture, to further the kingdom, to till the garden that we've been given in the book of Genesis. And we can't hold that back. We got to be committed to something. You know, we got to give ourselves, you know, be all in.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing when men are devoted to their families, their wives, their children, and giving up that time. So that goes a long way.
So we send you into the vineyard with that challenge. Don't be passive. Engage. Practice the faith. You know, be a mentor. Give your gifts, all that you've been given in your nature that God has granted you. Use that for the furtherance of the kingdom. And may our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.
Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make me wanna say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make you wanna say. Lord, I'm done fighting. I give my life to you. I want to lift your name high in everything I do. I'm walking in the Spirit. I'm so excited, y'all. Cause He converted me from a Saul to a Paul. Blindsided, it hit me like an uppercut. It's like He said low, so you giving up or what? He made it that clear to me, but the choice was mine. I could have said, no, I'm fine, but I be lying. And if I kept on trying to do it on my own, then I would never see my Lord sitting on His throne. I had a choice, and it should have been easy to me. But the truth is I was worse than a cheesy movie. You know the kind where the hero dies at the end, and I would surely die if I'm walking in my sin. I want to give thanks to Him every night and day. In communion with the saints, I just want to say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make me wanna say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make you wanna say.
Never knew what I had growing up to the stride. Mind playing tricks on me, yeah, boy, I was lost. I was too wrong, if I left, would it be right? Leave a note by my bed, I'll be gone by the night. But my mama prayed hard for me. When the devil had a grip on my soul, it made it hard to breathe. And the angels and the saints and blessed Mother, the Queen, interceded for me so I could properly see. So now I stand up and this ain't no comedy show. I take my faith like the first name of Sirius Jones. And that's serious, you must be delirious if you don't. But I won't kick rocks and throw stones. Look, bro, I just wanna give hope to the lost and broke, and let you know you ain't gotta be ashamed of your faith. See, we're far from being perfect, but with this love and grace, we can say yeah to the calling of becoming saints.
Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make me wanna say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make you wanna say,
yeah. From my head to my toes, when I welcome your presence, Lord, it's like I explode, yeah. Hey, my people already know His love is stronger than a drug. It'll have you right back for more. And everywhere that I go, feels like I bring His glow. So glad He blotted out my sins, washed me white as the snow. And I don't know a thing about walking a life without blame. I'm so lame. He's my crutch walker and my cane. Even window glasses stain to praise His name. And consuming communion, so inside Him we remain. Yeah, oh hey. And I scream a bit louder when I feel myself starting to lean like that Pisa Tower. I feel empowered when I see Satan cower. Christ working through me 24, no Jack Bauer. Something like Matt Lauer, I'm bringing the news, spreading the gospel of Christ. When you live it, you can't lose.
oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make me wanna say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make you wanna say, yeah.
So many things I could live for life. Fiddling riddles, I don't wanna choose to live a lie. Been in the middle, so stuck in the middle road, wondering how it'll go. Better act, I never know. Making decisions, avoiding many collisions. The vision is full dependence on He, the maker of heaven. Head to get my path right. Thoughts and my words to the point that I should act right. Yeah, to the fullness of humanity. Synergy living, man, defying laws of gravity. Rising above the accolade of His love. Forget devices, the drugs. Your life is priced with His blood. It's no coincidence you were born with a mission. To live as Christian means a solid conviction. A full year to the one who gave it all. A denial of the laws that I shouldn't make us fall.
Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah. And His church make me wanna say, yeah. Oh my God, make you wanna say, yeah. Jesus Christ make you wanna say, yeah. The Holy Spirit make you wanna say, yeah.